I was suggested this topic by a good friend of mine down there in the comments section, Mr. Jade, and he brought my interest to this and wanted to know my thoughts on it. We talked about it a little bit, but I figured I'd bring it to everybody else's attention. And this is straight from Bloomberg, and it's kind of funny considering the guy spent over $1 billion on the previous election, and what did he get for it? Maybe a couple of house seats in Florida? Fucking that's about it. What a goof. Anyways, there's a bunch of bankers out there that, well, I think in the new world, regardless of not if we get a fucking vaccine that everybody's going to take or enough to create herd immunity. Oh my God, that big scary word. But yeah, it's really exposed the ability for people to, well, effectively work from home. Not just, okay, kind of make this work, but yeah, do a very good job from home. Now, I've also been very active in reading different literature about how to, break away from the office or your shitty little 9-to-5 job and figure out different ways to do that. And concepts from books like The 4-Hour Work Week, which would have you get rid of, 1 day a week at the office and slowly, eventually just move to a remote workstation full time. Now, ways that you can go about that is working with your employer directly on ensuring them that their expected level of work will be taken care of regardless of where you're at. That, in fact, working at home provides fewer distractions and you are a lot more focused. You can get more stuff done. You don't have to commute to and from work, which for most people is probably the most dangerous part of their job. But I know you can get an infection in a paper cut. I know. And then those little thimbles are just so cumbersome. And who actually wants to wear those? But I digress. Anyways. So this idea that came out from the fucking big brains over there at Deutsche Bank thought that taxing people and giving 5% of their income to the United States government would be a great idea. I can see where they're coming from with this because they're saying that there is a bunch of different tertiary industries that, are missing out. Places like gas stations, service stations, a fucking food cart that sits outside your shitty office that peddles their little sugar donuts and deep fried french fries that are in canola oil from the last Great Recession. There are legitimate concerns, but I don't see a fucking 5% tax right off the top would be the best way to go about this. First and foremost, we'll just take a look at the article here as it stands. The argument to tax work from home benefits by, yes, that's a name. Anyways, 5% work from home tax can raise $4.8 billion a year in the United States, bank says. Okay, you know what makes this also very pernicious? Have you seen, I've done one video on the potential picks for Biden's cabinet. Yeah, it's full of a bunch of these banker types, a bunch of these lobbyist types, and I don't know, this might just become reality depending on how certain things fall. I'm not saying it's 100% certain. I just know that these people have Biden and his picks ears. Deutsche Bank says tax can help support low-income and essential workers. Yes, the poor and nurses most affected, obviously. Choosing to earn a living from home once the pandemic ends is a privilege that you should pay for. No, it's one you should negotiate with your employer, according to strategists from Deutsche Bank AG's research arm. Working from home will be a part of the new normal, well, after the pandemic has passed, the strategist led by Luke Templeman wrote in a note. How do you lay by the bay? What do you say? I just may. We argue that remote workers should pay a tax for the privilege. Preposterous. The team proposed a 5% levy on those who work from home on a regular basis, and not because the government lockdown mandate. Such a measure could raise $48 billion a year in the United States and about 16 billion euros in Germany, they say, to fund subsidies for low-income earners and essential workers who are unable to work remotely. I hate this. I hate this a lot. Deutsche Bank Research undertook a survey to examine the major global shift towards remote work that occurred as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which may endure as many professionals discover financial, personal, and professional benefits of the change. According to the results, more than half of those working remotely want to continue to do so for between 2 to 3 days a week, even after the health crisis ends. A survey of 800 people was conducted in September. And before we go any further, wasn't that kind of just what I said there? Yeah, you work with your employer and potentially you take a pay cut from working at home. Okay? That directly affects the business itself. You don't have to fucking pay the government for this. I don't fucking get it. But I understand that involves the fucking US Fed, and this is just the banks looking after their own ass and their own bottom line, to be perfectly honest. There's nothing charitable about this whatsoever. Working from the comfort of one's own home saves money on travel, lunch, and socializing, according to Deutsche Bank Research, and offers greater job security and flexibility. The strategist says, yet people who are working remotely are also contributing less to the infrastructure of the economy, potentially extending the slump in national growth, they said. But they also don't mention the fact that when you tax the people more, they have less money to put into the economy. So what are we talking about here? Okay? You are taxing the people who are probably taking a pay cut. I'm just thinking, you know what, this work from home strategy is probably going to be here to stay for a bunch of overly cautious business. And in order to accomplish that, there's probably just going to be a mandatory pay cut anyway. So if you want to install another tax, a 5% tax, it might not seem like a big thing, but when you look at the other tax increases that would be coming with a Biden plan, well, places like California and New York are going to be over 62% tax. And then you want to slap on another 5%. If you want to talk about killing off the economy for an extended period of time, that is no better example of cutting off your nose to spite your face, to be completely honest. Now, this whole article is, like it says here, it wraps up right there. And I hate it. I hate it a lot. The great Winston Churchill quote of, a nation trying to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket trying to pull it up by the handle. It just doesn't work. And you guys might be thinking, oh, okay, maybe this won't affect my place. Maybe some fucking sales tax off the top is not going to affect me whatsoever. But there are better ideas that we can use. I think I've laid out a couple of very good ideas that could be very possible, but there are also other bad actors. Don't just leave it to the feet of the banks here to come up with something stupid. Up here in Canada, more specifically Alberta, we do not have a provincial, or in the United States, a state's tax when it comes to consumer goods and services. We have a national over-the-top GST at 5%, and over here in Alberta, we, benefit from never, ever, ever of having one. We are the only province. The other three territories also don't have provincial sales tax because, well, obviously their territories, Don. I know. But they also have other goofy provisions. But Alberta's been mostly a very, well, I can't even say mostly. They've been a wildly successful, when it comes to an economic standard, province over the years. Not just during the big boom times of the early aughts. They've managed to weather the storm very well because we don't tend to have reactionary governments like we did for 4 years, but those times are better left covered under the rug anyways. But you have reactionaries at our lovely state broadcaster, the motherfucking CBC. PST is Alberta. Oh, in Alberta has long been taboo. Is Jason Kenney the one to finally sell it? A recent $24.2 billion deficit has revived questions about Alberta's revenues. This man has done a relatively good job when it's come to this stupid pandemic so far. He has been firm on not locking down anything, but of course that could change by the time that I've even published this video. But there was the one lockdown and we came out of it relatively quickly. Like I said, I've been critical because I think that he is definitely fighting a losing battle because it's a lot like what's happening with the Conservative government over in the UK. We have a massive, huge Conservative majority over here, but they are governing from a place of weakness. I don't know why. Mostly to appeal to, well, the previous government that was in here, who was firmly and completely decimated. Okay, I think they sit with 14 seats right now in the provincial government, and they had a majority for 4 years, by the way, so. But yeah, like I was saying, hasn't yet to lock down a second time, even though, idiots like the CBC, even though idiots from the federal government, fucking Manitoba, I think I talked about that a couple of days ago. And they've got a handful of cases. Barely anybody's dying, by the way. 11 people who were all in their fucking late 70s, early 80s passed away one day, and then they decided to go fucking nuclear over there. Meanwhile, yeah, Jason Kenney has at least done a good job to weather the storm so far. But yeah, when you have constant calls for taxation, which would probably be about that 5% here on goods and services, is that going to encourage somebody to go out and make large economic purchases? Is somebody going to go out and, buy a $40,000 pickup truck? Let's just use that number out there. And do you think they're going to want to buy it if you have to pay another $2,000 for a stupid provincial tax? No. All you're going to do is create more scarcity. People are just going to be holding on to money, and they aren't going to be sure if it's going to be taxed away in the future if the government decides to, shit the bed in the future. No. All this does is incentivize, like I was saying, scarcity. It incentivizes fear, and that's what the CBC loves to fucking do. But let's briefly take a look at this article here. Premier Jason Kenney's conservative ideology and long-term opposition to the tax increase could work in his favor if he tries to introduce provincial sales tax, political observers suggest. So let's just reread that again in case you guys missed the little bait and switch that they tried to pull here. Premier Jason Kenney's conservative ideology and long-term opposition to the tax increase could work in his favor if he tries to introduce a provincial sales tax. Why would he want to introduce a provincial sales tax? It's just you hacks out east who write these little fucking memos to try to subvert the Albertan mind, who think that it'd be such a good idea. Yeah, and it's not even on the table. Kenney has not yet proposed the PST. There you go. But the veteran politician who began public life heading up the Alberta Taxpayers Federation and its successor, the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, may be the leader to get it done. Why would he do it? Those are two conservative outlets that call for lower taxation. They are trying to make something just appear out of nowhere. And when you make these stupid calls like this and say that, you should lock down more, lockdowns don't work, by the way. You can see that right now happening in Australia. You're trying to use your pulpit, CBC specifically, as a means to instill fear in the populace. And that's what they're doing here. So I seen this come across first and foremost when we first locked down. And it's always just rubbed me the wrong way. And I thought this was a great way to tie it into, the 5% off the top that Deutsche Bank is lobbying for. And, our state broadcaster. And don't think CTV or Global News would deviate from this party line because, they all get paid from the exact same fucking pool of federal money. So, you know what, Kenny? Stand strong on this one, okay? I have faith that you will not do this. And, if you do, there's no coming back from it. So thanks again to Jade there for that first article there. It was definitely infuriating. It was definitely enlightening. And if anybody else has any cool articles that you'd like for me to take a look at and potentially make a video out of, feel free to drop them down there because, this was a fun one to tackle because, hey, you guys know me. I am not about taxation in order to create prosperity because that don't work and it ain't never gonna work. But thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.